Thanks again for tuning in to this tutorial about how to make your own custom stamp using our Carvey CNC machine. So on your end, the first thing that you're going to want to do is create an account for what's called Easel, which is the software that's browser-based that is used to make your designs or add text and then have the Carvey cut it out of a piece of material such as wood or plastic, or in our case, it's going to be a linoleum wood block. So the first thing you'll want to do is go to this URL, inventables.com, technologies easel, and then click on explore easel right here. And then you're going to want to click sign in through Inventables. And then what you'll do is, if you're a new customer, you just need to go through this process and click right there under new customer. And you need to set up an email address as well as a password in order to access this. So once you've done that, then you'll come to this area where you can put in your email and your password. What you're going to want to do is click on continue. And once we log in, you'll come to this projects page. So all of your projects that you make in Easel for the Carvey will be saved under this area right here. Everything's saved in your cloud account, so you can always refer back to it in the past. This is an older account that I created, so most things on here a couple years old, but you've got these options too, as you can click around your account. So we have the Easel free. We actually have the Easel Pro account in the Makerspace itself, which I've got the login information to, but we just use it in-house at the library. But with Easel Pro, you get a few extra bells and whistles, including extra text fonts that you can use, things like that. So if you just want to go for the Pro version, the free version, I would just go for that for now. And then when you send me your job to do on the Carvey, I can just set the job up in the Pro version in case you wanted to add some text or what have you that you don't have access to on the free version. Then you've got different options over here, so just to show you what that looks like. All right, so now what we're going to do is click on New Project. So once you're logged in, you'll come to this interface for Easel. And essentially on this left side right here, this is where you put all your design elements, such as text or images that you want cut or carved out of whatever material you're going to have the Carvey cut into. Over on this side, this will give you a simulated preview of what it's going to look like, and I'll show you what that looks like, but it's super handy to kind of give you an idea of what your design will look like once it's cut or carved out. And just one note to make is that you want to make sure, if you click under machine, you want to make sure you're clicked on Carvey for the machine. There's a special little L clamp on the machine right there that's used to home the bit tool itself, and so you're going to need to make sure that you're choosing the Carvey as the machine. If you choose a different machine, it's actually going to change the parameters in terms of size of your project. So it's best to go with the Carvey since that's the machine that we're going to be using for this project. All right, so on this left side over here, this gives you some design options. So you have the option to use different shapes in your project. So as an example, if you grab this, if you want to use a triangle, just click on that and you can move that over here. As you can see, you get instantaneous feedback as to what that's going to look like getting cut into that material. And right here is where you choose your cut depth. So if I take that all the way down, you're basically going to be cutting all the way through your material. If you move it up like that, you can see it's only, if you click on simulate, it's only going to just slightly carve into the material, and it's going to give you an estimation of 3 minutes using an 1/8 inch bit. And with your cut options, so you basically have different options such as clear out a pocket, and it gives you an idea. It's going to cut out all of that inside your design or whatever image you have. You can also cut on the shape path like that, as you can see, and I'm going to change this just to give you a better idea of what that looks like. Cut outside the shape of the path, which you probably wouldn't notice that much with this, but with sort of more complex looking objects, you'll kind of notice a difference. And then a cut inside the shape of the path. So one other cool thing that you can do is that you can edit the points of your object. So if we go down to edit points and click on E, it will give you the option to take the points of your object and move them around like this, either in straight lines or in a curved way like that. And you'll notice that this comes pretty handy if you import um, your own pictures into Easel to try to have it etch out into um, whatever material you are using. You'll find that the editing tools, the curved and straight, will be pretty helpful if you need to kind of straighten things out or just kind of tweak the image to your taste. Then if we move over to the shape tool, you can see this will show you the position that your object is in the XY boundaries. So X going this way and then Y going this way. You can also, it'll also show you the width and height of the object, and you can actually lock those parameter values if you want those values locked in to um, keep the sizing proportionate. You can also change the angle of rotation of the object. So let's say if I wanted to change this to a 45-degree angle like that, that's what you do right there. You can also do this by grabbing the handles of this and doing it like that. And you can also change the size of your object just by grabbing it like that. But if you have it locked, it should lock in your proportions while you're doing that, just like that. Okay, so I'm gonna delete this for now. So yeah, you've got your different shapes you can work with. You also have this line tool, which basically gives you the option to click at a bunch of different lines. If you had a specific shape that you were hoping to create, this would be a good tool for that. And as you can see, so you get the instantaneous feedback over here. If we click on simulate, it says it's going to take about 7 minutes to etch into it at a depth of 0.2 inches. But then what you can also do is edit the points, clicking on this. And there's all these little node tools that you can use. So if you want to make specific changes to these little points, you can do that with the editing tool. And delete that. Then moving on, we've got this drill tool that basically just makes a hole that will cut through all the way through your material. So if you make something here in Easel, say like something you want to hang up on a wall, this is the tool that you'd use to do that. Then moving along, we've got our text font tool, and like I said, you are limited to just using these types of fonts in the free version. We do have access to the pro version, so with looks like 300 additional fonts. So if there was some other fonts you wanted to explore, just let me know, reach out. I'm going to give you my contact info at the end of the video, and I can kind of look around if you'd like me to switch up the fonts for you. Then next we have their Pro Design library, which what's really cool is they just updated this, and it looks like, from what I can tell, there are hundreds, if not at least around 1,000 new images that you can use in your designs. It looks like some of these you would need an Easel Pro subscription, but you do have access to some free designs as well, which is pretty cool. So say we could take this alien face, click on that, and we could choose the cut type. So let's say we wanted to do a outline cut, but on the inside. So we'll click on that, and then it actually shows you what that's going to look like. You can set this up on your work area and kind of change it however you'd like. So another tool that's pretty cool is if you go up to edit, you can center it to the material. So if we click that, that's centered to this. This is an example, a piece of birch plywood that is 12 inches going this way by 8 inches this way, and it's 0.5 inches in thickness. And this is using an 1/8 inch bit to cut through this. We can also switch around the bits and see what that looks like. So if we used a 1/16 inch bit, get a little bit more detail, the lines are less thick, and it looks like it's going to take about 4 minutes to do that. So yeah, it is worth looking around the design library if you want to try to play around with some different images that you're not creating yourself. These are all free to use. And it's very nice and generous of the company Inventables to do this for folks to use in their um, in your projects. All right, so the next thing we're gonna go over is the apps tools. So what's really cool about this is they have a bunch of different, um, it's an app library. So basically it's a bunch of different projects that you can use Easel for with the Carvey CNC machine. Or if you have your own CNC router at home, I know that Easel can be used with a lot of the um, more consumer budget friendly CNC routers on the market. Some of them are called the 3018 CNC routers, so I know that Easel can be used with this too. But essentially, with this app library, it just gives you some extra functionality for your whatever project you have. You can do things like create a fidget spinner. What we're going to use today is called the Stamp Maker app. We're also going to use Image Trace to import an image the image of the Missoula Public Library logo. But I would play around with this and kind of see if there's any other things that are of interest to you for whatever project you're going to pursue. Um, you can do things like offset text, warp the path of your text like that. Um, yeah, kind of you've got a lot of options in terms of what you'd like to do for extra bells and whistles to add to your projects. So I would check out the app library. It's pretty cool. And specifically today, we're going to be using these two, the Stamp Maker app and the Image Trace app. All right, so the next tool on the toolbar is the import function. So if we click on this, we have the option to import things like scalable vector graphics files, which are image files that contain what's called nodes. As you can kind of see, that's the node right there. You would create scalable vector graphics files in programs such as Adobe Illustrator, or there is a free open source vector graphics program called Inkscape that would be worth exploring if you're looking to make your own graphics to run with the Carvey and Easel. You can also import G-code created from different CAD CAM software packages. There is a specific process for that, which I'm still trying to explore. So we're not going to go over that today, but hopefully in a future video. And then we've also got what's called image trace, which is also included in the apps area right there. But image trace, that's where you can import your own JPEG or PNG images that you have taken or have found on the web that are free to use, and you can include that into your designs. And I'll show you how to use that later on. You can also import DXF files, which you would find in programs such as AutoCAD or any other CAD-based systems where you're using creating 2D designs. So you would import the DXF file into here, and it would show you the sort of two-dimensional representation of that. All right, so moving along, you also have the option to work in inches or millimeters, which I oftentimes, I like to use millimeters when I'm working on projects for the Carvey that use scrap pieces of wood, because a lot of times the scrap pieces of wood are not a specific measurement. They've been cut up in different ways, so the sizes of it, I get a little bit more precision if I use millimeters when I'm measuring it out with a measuring tool. So, but you've got the option to switch between inches and millimeters. Down here, this is basically your project work area. And so this is for the first part of our project that we're going to be working on, where we're going to do the initial parts of carving out a stamp from a linoleum wood block. Our project file is going to be right there. And then essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate that project area right here and create another one for the second or for the last cut, which is basically cutting out the logo itself all the way to the bottom of the linoleum block, so it's its own separate entity from the block. So we're cutting out from that. And I'll explain this more as we get into this, but this basically just gives you options to have different work areas for your projects. So say in this first area, you could do, I don't know, a couple of different objects like this. In the second area, you could do text right there. third one, you could say import one of these images from the design library, like that. And so essentially, this is a really good way of, if you have specific things that you need to do with your project or change out different bits, this is a really good way to kind of split your project up into steps. So this is the first step, the second step, and the third step. So it's a real handy tool for that. So moving along up here, this is where we can name our projects. So I'm going to click up here and call it Carvey Stamp Project. And my first name is Ira, so I'm going to add Ira to it and click on rename. And so when you click on your project right there, you can rename it. But then if you click up here, this is it'll bring up the projects area right here where you can see all of the other projects that you've created and worked on. So it's pretty handy that considering that this is in the cloud, it's really nice because it basically auto saves your projects for you, especially ones that you've created. Looks like some of these ones we did about 3 years ago. So moving along up here, we've got our file menu. So if you click on new, that's just going to create a new project. If you click on open, that's going to open this up so you can access previous projects that you've worked on. You can make a copy of your objects right there. Like that, it's making a copy of your project. You can import an SVG file from there. You can import G-code. If you click download zip, it's basically just going to download a zip file, I believe, of the objects or images in your project, but it doesn't actually save any parameters such as the size or the bit size tool that you're working at. So I haven't used that tool, but it might be worth exploring for you. One big thing to note is that since the library is still closed and you wouldn't be able to come in and complete this project, obviously there has to be a way that you can send me your project file so I can have it be cut in the Carvey itself. So the workaround for this is if you click on this share tool right here, click on that and you're going to want to choose the option to share with a link. And so when you've completed your project, whether it's making a stamp like the video that we're going to do today or any other sort of project you want to do with the Carvey, you want to use the share with a link tool and simply use Control-C to copy the link. And then with whatever email client that you use, you just want to email me that link and then I can access it from the computer that runs the Carvey itself and then run your job for you. All right, then under the edit drop down, you've got all your kind of basic editing tools. You can cut and copy design elements. You can flip things horizontally or vertically. Well, yep, there you go. You can send things either backwards or forwards in your design. So let's say I want to cut this at a depth of 1/8 of an inch, and I want this to cut deeper at 3/8 of an inch. And let's say I overlap these two like that. And let's say I want to send this to the back of this design. So I will send it. Click send back, and it's going to go beneath this. So as you can see, what's actually going to happen is only these parts of that triangle will get cut at a depth like that. Otherwise, this circle is going to be the thing that you will see in your design. So yeah, there's those options right there. You can bring things to the front of your design, etc. Options to select by cut type or select by matching depth. One handy thing I use a lot that I showed you earlier is center to material. So if you want your images or text centered to whatever size material you are using, this is a really handy tool to use for that. So it's centering these elements right now to this piece of birch plywood that's 12 inches by 8 inches by 0.5 inches in thickness. So whatever material that you're using, the one that we're going to be using today is going to be quite small. So I'll probably use that tool and then kind of just tweak it to paste. So that's how that works. One other option that you have is these align tools right up here. So let's say if I clicked over here and got some text, oops, I'll click choose Baskerville, move that over there. Say I'll move this over to there, move this like that. And I want to choose another option, do a fill cut on that. So let's say I wanted to align these in some sort of way. I would use the align tool. So I want to highlight all of these, and then you can align them in different ways. So this will line them up like that. I don't want to do that. I'm going to do Control Z. I can line them up going that way. So that just gives you an idea of kind of how that align tool works. So you'll notice you'll use it likely a lot if you have multiple elements in your designs that you want to kind of have centered or in some sort of like arranged way. But yeah, that is the alignment tool. All right, so moving along, under here we've got the machine, and like I'd said before, you want to choose the Carvey because that's the machine that uses this um, software. So, and what we're going to be doing our project on today. So you always want to choose the Carvey, just so you have the specific parameter areas of what the Carvey can use, which is about 12 inches. I think it's 11.6 inches by 8 going this way. And then the depth of cut with the Carvey is it's about 1 inch or just a little over 1 inch, but no more than that. And then under Toolbox, this is kind of a new option right here. You can click here and it shows you what sorts of bits can be used, or you can add a bit. You won't really need to do that because all of the bits that you would use on your project we have. So this is all stuff that I would set up anyway. So you don't really need to play around with the toolbox area, but if you want to just kind of see what it's all about, you can do that. Then we've got the help area right there. The community forum is pretty good for if you have certain projects that you want to tackle that you're kind of curious about what other people have done to do that. I would definitely explore that. There's also help guides and a troubleshooting guide. Then the shop area basically takes you to the shop for inventables to buy materials from them. So that's what that tool does. All right, then over here, this is actually where we choose the material that we're going to use and the size. So it just gives you the options here in Easel of specific materials that they support. But if, say, you're using a piece of scrap wood and you're not totally sure what kind of wood it is, we would just make an educated guess as to kind of the closest thing to it. For today's project, we're going to be using linoleum because we're basically using a block of wood with a little bit of linoleum on top of that. And for today's project, I'm going to change the width right now to 5 inches. And then length is 3 inches. And then the thickness, I actually measured it in millimeters, so I'm going to switch over to millimeters right now. Click back up here, and it looks like 22 millimeters in thickness. So that is our block of wood or linoleum block that we're going to be using. It's pretty small, so it's a bit smaller. So we're going to have to definitely, make our design elements try to fit into there to make this work. But that gives you an idea of how you set up your stock material and entering your dimensions in, choosing your material type right there. So the next section is where we choose our bit. And we're going to actually use 2 bits for the first part of this carve. And then for the second part of the project, we're going to be using another bit in order to cut the whole design out from the linoleum block itself. So right now you can see under this bit area right here that it's defaulting to a 1/16 inch bit. We're actually going to be using 2 different bits for the first part of this project, which I'll switch up in a minute, but this kind of gives you an idea of the options you have for using bits. We also have some other bits that I've bought over the last couple of years with different cutting diameters. So in that case, you'd click on Other, and then you put in the diameter width of that. For another part of the cut, we're going to be using what's called a 30-degree V engraving bit, which you will have to put in the value. We'll have to use the Pro version of Easel to do that, but I'll show you how that goes. But this just gives you an idea of where you put in your bit size and settings. And then up here, you've got what's called your cut settings. So the company Inventables has basically chosen all these things called the feed rate, the plunge rate, and depth per pass. So the feed rate is basically the rate that the milling bit is going into the material in the X and Y dimensions. The plunge rate is actually the rate of the milling bit plunging into the material, so going into the Z depth. And then the depth per pass is the depth that the milling bit itself is going each time it goes around and makes a cutting pass. So with what we've got today, and I would recommend this for any sort of future jobs that you do on the Carvey, is that you go with their automatic cut settings. They've basically tested all of these settings on all types of materials. So for linoleum, they've got these types of settings. If we click over to, say, hard maple, their cut settings will be different as well. So I would just stick with the automatic settings for now. So that takes care of the upper part of this with your cut and bit settings. So once you basically have your design set up and you share it with me via email, the next step that I'll do is I will put the material in the Carvey itself, put it down on some clamps to make it sit nice and steady. And then the next step is you click on the carve button, and it walks you through just a couple of things just to make sure that you've got everything ready to go before you start your project. And after that, it will cut and carve your design. All right, so now for this next step, we're actually going to import the image that we're going to use to create the stamp itself and set up the parameters for cutting it. So the first thing we'll do is, what's nice is you have this handy home tool. So if you click on home, it will zoom your project into basically the area that you have to work with. So this is the 5 inches by 3 inches, and then you can actually see on the side right here that depth is 22 millimeters right there. So it's a really handy tool, the home tool, to just kind of zoom in on the project area. All right, so now what we're going to do is import the image that we're going to use to create the stamp itself, which for today's lesson, it's going to be the Missoula Public Library part of our logo, just the text of that. So I'm going to click on Import, choose Image Trace, and it's going to ask you up here to upload file. So I'm going to click Upload File. Click on Select Files to Upload, and it is going to be opening up from my USB drive. And I'm going to choose this one. It's MPL logo.png. Click on Open, and then click on Upload. Now, as you can see, it uploaded like this, and you've got 2 tools at your disposal to play around with how your design looks. So there's Threshold. If I change this up to like 99%, you'll just see with threshold that increases the size of the lettering, the thickness of it. If I move it all the way down, kind of just makes certain parts of the design super thin. So I'm going to choose, I think I'll do about kind of a mid value of, I'll do 75 right there. For smoothing, that basically will show you, will basically let you smooth out parts of your text or design. So as you can see, I went to 0.8, and it's much smoother than having it down at 0.4. You can actually see there's kind of some edges like that. If you take it all the way down to 0, well, I guess that smooths it out as well, but I'm going to take it back to 0.8 for that. If you click on Invert, that's basically going to invert this image. So essentially, in Easel, anything that has a black background like this, that basically means that's stuff that is going to be cut by your milling bit. Anything left in white is going to be what's left. Um, so if we chose to, and this will actually happen with our design, but if you do choose to do this with other projects, depending on the size of your material, it could take a really long time to cut out or mill out, just because you're going to be taking out all of this material around um, this text. So um, yeah, so for now, we're going to take off invert like that. And with trace outlines, it basically just traces an outline um, of your text or whatever image you're using. So what we're going to do next is click on import. As you can see, it imports at a pretty large size. So we're going to have to shrink that down. What I'm going to do first is highlight this, go up to edit, and I'm going to use what's called the combine tool to combine all of this text into one entity. So now what I want to do in order to keep the proportion of this text that we imported, I'm going to click Control on my keyboard, and then I'm going to click the side of this right like that and just shrink this down just so. I'm going to move this inwards like that and just kind of try to get it lined up. I'm going to use this home tool right there. I'm going to use the up arrow on my keyboard to kind of move this up a little bit more. I think what I'm going to do is make this text, I'm going to shrink it down a little bit, even more. I'm going to use the control tool, click on control, go like that, and that should actually work. And so I'm going to go up to edit and center to material. And as we can see right now, this isn't going to work because essentially Easel is not going to let us carve into the material with or design elements going over this L clamp in the Carvey, because this is actually a part of the machine that cannot be cut on. It's basically a area where the bit itself taps and homes itself to, and you'll see that in the video, a later video. But essentially, just there's no elements that can be cut or carved in this area right there. So what we're going to have to do is just move this text up a little bit using our up arrow, like such. And we do also want to leave some room around the edges for the final cut that we're going to do to separate the part that we carved from the stock material itself. So we'll just keep it right here for now, and then we can adjust it to taste in the future. All right, so the next thing that we're going to want to do is change the bits that we're going to be using. So if we click on this, I'm going to choose for the first one, it's a special bit that we have. It's 1.5 millimeters in diameter. And then the additional bit, I'm going to click that. It is, whoops, giving me that error, but I'm going to click on the detail bit. I'm going to choose this 1/32 inch just to give you an idea, but we're going to switch this second bit later to the 30-degree V carving engraving bit, which we have to do in the Pro version, which I'll show you at the later part of the video. But this just kind of gives you an idea of what it'll look like. So for now, this is what that looks like. We're actually going to change this up like that, but our cut depth will actually be changed in the next section where we use the tool to make a stamp. All right, so the next thing we're going to want to do is click on the text to highlight it. And we're going to move over to the apps tool right here, and we're going to choose the stamp maker. Click on that, and as you can see, it turns your design into a stamp by converting it and adding a background. And you can click that link to learn more about making stamps. What we're going to do is click on import. And essentially, as you can see, it created this larger box outside of the text. And we're going to have to resize that, and we'll go over that in a minute. But essentially what's going to happen is that the larger diameter bit is going to be going through all of this, and it's called the roughing cut, or the roughing milling part of this project. So it's going to be cutting out all of this area right here, as well as the outline of these letters. And then on the second part of this, the detail bit is actually going to be adding more detail by cutting out the specific letters and getting all of the small, tiny parts of the letters cut out. And then on the last and final part, we're going to use a different bit for this. But as you can kind of see, essentially the whole piece itself is going to be cut through all the way. You can kind of see that on the sides here. It's going to be cut to the bottom of the material piece itself, so this can actually come off from this material and be its own stamp apart from the material that we cut it out from. So essentially what we'll want to do now is we're going to have to resize this thing to make it work. So I'm going to highlight these like that, and I'm going to click Control on my keyboard and click down like that. So we are actually going to have to make this a little bit smaller, unfortunately, but we'll make it work. I'm going to use my up arrow key to move it up like that. And then I think what I'll do, I'm going to click the home tool right there. Actually, I'll zoom out. See what this looks like centered to the material. So I'm going to move this up a little bit more, and I think what I'll do is click the home button and go up and click Shift on my keyboard and grab that and just make it small like that. So it's going to be a bit smaller. You do with this L clamp right there on the Carvey with smaller pieces of material, you are unfortunately limited to sort of the stamp app. But if you have a larger linoleum block, certainly you could create larger sized images or text. But for this, we're just going to be playing around with changing this image size to make all of this work. So I'm going to just slightly move this up like that. So this should actually work right now. So what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to create a copy of this project workspace. So I'm going to come down here and do duplicate, and I'm going to rename this to final cut. And then I will rename this to initial carve. So then that gives us an idea of, so this first part will be the initial carve, and then the final cut. I'll click over here, and essentially we're just going to get rid of everything else besides this outline right there, because this final cut is just going to be cutting through the whole material itself to basically get the stamp we created to break off from the material that we cut it out from. All right, so the next thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this outline tool right there. I'll highlight that and click on delete, because we don't need it because we actually have it in here right there. So, and we'll deal with that part of the design later. So we'll click over here, and I think what I want to do too is just move this up a little bit so it is basically right kind of at the top edge of the material. So you can kind of see, we basically just want, we don't really want that little edge to be left. So I'm just trying to get it set up so we can get rid of that like that. So, all right. So now what we've got with our design, I'll zoom out a little bit. If we click on simulate, basically what it's going to do is it's going to first, and what's really cool is you have this playback that you can play. I'm going to fast forward it, but it's actually going to show you the toolpaths that first bit's going to take. So it's going to do all of that. And then the second detail bit is going to come in here. It's this fluorescent green. It's basically going to cut out all of the details of the letters. And then essentially what it's going to do is take 32 minutes altogether. I think with a V-carve bit, it's going to take just a little bit longer, but it just gives you an idea of it's giving you the amount of time it's going to take to cut out the initial roughing passes. It's going to be 16 minutes, and then using a detail bit that gives you the amount of time that is going to take. Okay, so now we're going to move over to this final cut workpiece area, and we are just going to click and grab these things, and off to the side, I'm going to click on delete. I'm going to find this text inside there, whoops, and then just click on delete. But I'm going to do Control Z first because that moved just slightly, and I'm going to make sure the text is highlighted and delete that. So essentially we just want this cut path left. And what I'm going to do is we're not actually going to be using 2 bits for this final part. I'm going to click up here and get rid of that detail bit. And for this bit, I'm going to change it to a 1/8 inch double flute straight end mill. Essentially what this bit then is going to do, it's going to take less time than if we used, say, a 1/16 inch bit, but it's just like I had mentioned before, it's going to basically do the cutting of the whole stamp itself out of the stock material that we put it in, so it can actually be a separate entity. So if we click on simulate, it says it'll take about 3 minutes. Sometimes it might take a little bit more. But yeah, that's just the final step for this. And as you can kind of see, what is located in here, these yellow little things, they're called tabs. Essentially, tabs are added to any pieces of material that you cut all the way through to essentially help the material stay in place while it's getting cut. So the tabs are just like little thin pieces of material that are left over on each, and you can actually choose where they're going to be. But essentially what's going to happen when this gets cut out, there's going to be a little bit of material that's 2 millimeters high, left right there, left right there, left right there, and left right there. Just so when this is getting cut out, it doesn't actually pop upwards from this stock material. It's just a kind of a surefire way to make sure that the cut will actually complete without any errors. And what's nice about having tabs is that you can basically just use like an X-Acto knife or any sort of tool like that to cut your tabs away. So we're going to leave them on for this. All right, so we basically have everything set and ready to go. The next step is I just want to basically make a copy of this, and so I'm going to click on share, take that link, copy it with Control C, and then I'm going to email that to my work email, and then open that up in our Easel Pro version, and just basically change out the detail bit to a V-carve bit, and then we'll get this job ready to go. And I'll click carve, and then I'll have footage of the carving itself. I'm going to have the sound off just because it does get pretty loud, but it will give you an idea, a visual idea of the whole process that we've done thus far, sort of to completion. So I will see you in the last part of the video. All right, so now I have this project imported into our Pro version of Easel, and you can see that I changed the bit for the first part of the project to a 1.5 millimeter bit, and then the detail bit, which we put the info down here, is a 30-degree angle V carving bit with a width of 3.15 millimeters. So yeah, it is all ready to go. So the next thing I just need to do is click on this carve, and it's going to walk me through a few things just to make sure I have everything set up. So we're good to go. So we're first going to do the roughing pass, and then after that I'm going to change out the bit to that V-carve bit, and we'll do the detail pass. So I'm going to click on continue, and now I'll take you to the footage of it getting carved. So thanks for watching. So this is what it actually looks like when you have your material all set up. You can see up here, that is where our bit is set up in the collet, and that's the material clamped down. And so the next thing we just need to do is click on carve, and we'll get this going. I'm going to turn off the sound because it does get really loud when it's carving, so it's not very pleasant to listen to, but I'm also going to speed up the footage as well, but hopefully you enjoy watching this getting carved. Hey guys, so I did run into a little bit of trouble with the last cut. I realized that actually having um, this final outline cut on the edge of the material really kind of messed up um, the milling bit and the machine as it was cutting. It basically would kind of get jumbled up around this point as it was making the turn to cut into here, and then it actually everything got offset. It would start cutting into here. So essentially what I did was I went back in here in my design and I just made this design smaller as well as this area too. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this over, or duplicate it rather, get rid of this other final cut, and then on this piece just going to get rid of this text, that little cut piece right there. Whoops, right there. So yeah, so I'm going to retry this carve. The lettering turned out pretty well actually, but the last part didn't turn out well. So I'm gonna give it another try, and hopefully it should work. But yeah, that's just one thing to note when you're doing these kind of carves. It's probably would be good to get a larger piece of that linoleum block material, as well as you definitely want to note to not have your the machine cut basically on the edge up here, or else it seems like it's just going to kind of mess up your cut. So that was a learning process. So I learned that, and I just wanted to pass along. Hey guys, so I wanted to show you the end of the project, how this turned out. Actually turned out pretty well. There are a few parts between the letters where I just need to kind of pick out small parts of the plastic linoleum just to kind of make it clean it up a little bit, but it actually turned out pretty well. What I actually did for the whole project itself, I kind of changed things up as I did the cutout first with the 8-inch bit, and then I used this for the second part of the cut. I used the engraving bits. That was kind of the way that I found um, to get it to work. I was having some issues back and forth with it, not properly sort of cutting all the way around this. So yeah, I just want to show you how that turned out. I'm gonna put my email below the screen, so you can email me with your Easel Carvey projects. If you remember from earlier in the video, you just want to go up to the file menu and choose share, and there's a URL, and just copy that and then email it to the address that I'm going to put in the video. If you're interested in trying to do a similar stamp, this is the linoleum block that I got. It's called Speedball. This is a 5-inch by 3-inch. I got it from Michael's online. They didn't have it here in Missoula, unfortunately. But so if you're interested in trying to do that yourself, you can get these yourself, and you can set it up to drop them off during a curbside service. You can reach out to me and we'll figure that out. I also have a number of these too, and I think I bought them for about, they're like $2.50 each. So we always just use one of these, and you can just pay for it when you pick it up, just the cost of it. So thanks for watching, and I hope it was fun, and I will catch you on the next video. Thanks.